As countries race to embrace artificial intelligence, the balance between innovation and safety remains a key focal point.
But concerns over ethics, bias, and inclusion also cast a shadow over promises of productivity and advancement. Now, that's a major theme in this year's ATxSummit in Singapore, where Sarah Al-Khaldi is right now. So, Sarah, what can you tell us about the key takeaways so far on this issue?
Yeah, a lot of excitement, of course, in the development of the technology and the potential it can bring. And a lot of conversations at the event as well on Singapore's role in the global AI ecosystem. And so we'll talk more about this with Sir Lew Chuen Hong, CEO at Singapore's Infocomm Media Development Authority. Sir Lew, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Sarah, for having me.
Yeah, so 5 years now, ATxSummit. What is different so far for this year, and what stands out to you the most?
Well, I think what really strikes us is that, the energy is just palpable, and you got to be here to feel it. I think the remarks from, the top leaders from government, from companies, from startups, has been that I think the lineup has been phenomenal. People have walked away with real key insights around where the frontier of technology and what its impact is. And I think something clicked as far as the urgency around implementation. How do you do it in a reliable and trustworthy manner? And, we're kind of just quite happy that it's standing room only, actually, in some of the plenaries and discussions. But for me, the most heartening elements is you just get a sense of the conversations around the corridors. I think people are making meaningful exchanges, conversations, and networks. And I think that puts Singapore in a very, very good position. Not just in the heart of Asia, but I think in global conversations around how do you utilize technology to drive that broader good and for the economy and society.
Yeah, and in the companies that we've spoken to, we've heard that adoption is high here in Asia. Companies are looking to expand in the region to capture, the increased adoption. How does Singapore attract them to this country and ensure that AI is safe and trusted for everybody?
Well, it's a great question. I think there are a few key strands, in this, and I think this permeated the discussion here at ATX. First, enterprises are very keen to adopt that, AI and tap that AI potential. But, in my fireside chat with Mistral, the CEO, Arthur Mensch, we do need to help companies overcome certain challenges. And some of the things that they are thinking about, and the key trends is how do you make full use of open source so that you have full control as far as the model is concerned? How do you make sure that it is efficient, because it comes down to ROI and business cost. And then how do you make sure that the framework and the orchestration, abstracts and takes away a lot of the complexity so that businesses can focus on business. I think a lot of that at the private sector to private sector level, between the model developers as well as the companies using them, I think will be a key element to drive forward that adoption. But of course, at the same time, it's important to build a broader trusted ecosystem. And that trusted ecosystem, we say building enough trust then gives maximal space as far as innovation is concerned. When a product is safe and is reliable, then people will want to actually use it. Our emphasis has been a lot more practical. On the ground, we had a global AI assurance pilot where companies from both the users as well as testers actually took through the paces and to say, this is how you would test it. And sort of this is being shared at the conference today. And we're distilling some of that into what we call a basic starter kit. And this starter kit will provide guidance for companies on how you test around things like hallucination, data leakage, and give you practical steps how to have a better trusted deployment of AI.
Yeah, so testing is key from what we're hearing here, but collaborations as well and partnerships with different stakeholders for Singapore. How has that been so far for you, and what's the approach you're taking when it comes to finding collaborations and the right partnerships?
Well, I think there are two key strands here. Of course, the first element is partnerships across the different stakeholders. So it's not just about governments doing policy. It's not just about the technologists pushing things. It's not just about civil society thinking about things like online harms. It's the ability to bring all of this together, both at the private sector, civil society level, as well as the government level. And I think this has been a great way. A practical example is, Singapore convened 100 of the top scientists to look at where the R&D gaps are as far as building a more safe and reliable AI ecosystem. And then we presented this inaugural Singapore consensus on R&D priorities to the policymakers and to sort of help shape what that approach would look like. And then this is now being taken up by the companies. And then how do you put some of this as practical first steps into the deployment of AI? I think these are the kind of collaborations that we want to try and build across the different stakeholders. I think the other key element is also to make sure this collaboration is not just amongst perhaps smaller groups of countries, that we have the ability to spread this to many small countries around the world. We run this thing called the Digital Forum of Small States. And Singapore is a small state. There are many other small countries out there. And if we can help seed that ability to transfer capability, I think that will enrich the global discourse and the use of AI for that broader public good.
Yeah, so we've talked about the businesses, collaborations with other countries and governments. We also can forget, of course, the people who are using this in their everyday life. How can we ensure that no one gets left behind, in this development and this technological innovation?
That's a great question. I think the ability to make sure everyone is included and the theme around digital inclusion, I think is a key element to bring society together. I think within Singapore, we are working very hard directly with our schools to make sure that we give our kids enough understanding around computational thinking, power of digital technology. And recently, we're adding an entire module around what does AI actually mean and what are the benefits. Because then this allows them to better understand both the opportunities as well as just to guard against and be much more aware around the harms associated with that. And spreading this out more broadly across Singapore society then opens up both the opportunities as well as the resilience around Singapore as a whole. Even as a small country, we're then taking some of this and working with the UNDP, the United Nations, and we have a playbook around what that digital inclusion might mean, so that perhaps some of the lessons that we've learned in Singapore can be used to share that with the broader global community and the United Nations.
Yeah, so a lot of work being done on the trust, safety, education side. Of course, technological advancement, of course, going fast as well. What are you looking forward to in the next year when it comes to your work at IMDA?
Well, I think one of the key things that we really want to look forward to is how do you build and push collectively ability for Singapore to deploy AI at the forefront in the region. One of the key announcements this time was we built Sea Lion, which is a Southeast Asia language and context-specific large language model that is open source. And this will help any company, local companies, international companies, which want to do business. Hopefully they'll find this useful and base it off in Singapore. And then recently, today actually, we launched the speech version, which is called Maryline, and building a consortium around it, because we all know the use of AI very often can be in speech. And then we kind of code switch between English, be it Singlish, local languages. And Maryline, which is what this is called, is now a consortium. And we're pulling in big companies from DBS to Grab to the Ministry of Health. And likewise, hopefully with this nationally aggregated capabilities, we're able to support the growth of the ecosystem, both within Singapore as well as the broader region.
Yes, lots of work to be done. Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you.
Lew Chuen Hong, there, Chief Executive of Singapore's Infocomm Media Development Authority.